Hi, this is KSM and welcome to another edition of PDS, which is the Personal Development Series with me right here. In the last video, we looked at how important it is to have an effective application letter. As I said then, there are many applications that are written that end up right into the garbage can. There are people who write, and for so many reasons, it could be bad grammar, it could be misspelling, whatever it is, they just end up in the garbage can. Okay? Then you can make a reference to them if you need to refresh your memory. Today, we're going to be talking about CVs. I told you that the process was 3 steps. First is an effective application letter. Next is a dynamic CV. And the third part was having strong interview skills. Today we're going to look at how do you come up with a dynamic CV. The same things apply, you know. When we're talking about application letters, I was talking about we have about 2,000 applicants. How do you stand out? The CV is the same thing. How do you stand out? What do you put in your CV that makes you stand out? A quick question is this. Let's say you are 2 people, you have the same background, you have the same qualifications, and you have practically the same education. How does one get picked over the other? Presentation is all due on how they're able to present themselves in their CVs and in a way market themselves as the most competitive. Now, one thing before I go on that you have to understand is that when you are responding to a CV or when a company has advertised for a position, they're looking for one thing. They're looking for somebody to come in and fill that position and add value to that position. Don't forget about that. Whoever is going to come in, whoever they're going to hire, is going to be somebody who's going to be coming in and who's going to be adding value to that position for the company. Keep that in mind. So in your CV, to keep it short, all you're trying to do is that you're trying to convince whoever is looking at your CV that with regards to hiring for this position, I am the best. How do you do that? It's amazing, but the same steps that we used in application letters apply here. The context of relevance, the context of being specific applies directly to CVs. Very important. Most CVs are thrown away or they are ineffective because the main thing, too much information. Somehow we think that when we are applying for a job, the more you tell the person about everything you can do, the better your chances are. It's a big myth. It's not true. So whatever we have done in this world, whatever we have learned or read, we think that the CV is the place to launch everything there and say, oh, I've given them all the information about me. I must get this job. No. They're not looking for all the information. We go back to the famous R word. They're looking for the relevant information. Okay? So say I, KSM, sitting here. Let's imagine for briefly that I'm a good cook. And I'm applying for, let's say, a position for a research director. Now, in my CV, I include that, oh, by the way, I happen to be a great chef. It has no relevance. Unless, of course, listen to this, unless, of course, I'm applying to work as an editor for a cooking newspaper. Okay? So the same information that can be totally irrelevant in one situation can be very relevant in another. It is up to you to decide what in your background, what in your education, what in your experience is relevant to that position. So that it's just a matter of cutting out the chaff. No, this one is not important. This information they don't need. This information they don't need. The information they need is what applies to that position that you are looking for. So that's the first thing that you have to understand. The same relevance issue that you dealt with in application letters comes in when you're doing the CV. The advice that I give to people is this. It is almost a crime to have only one CV. Yes, you can have the outline. You can have a very generic CV that talks about your education, background, and all kinds of things. However, when you see a job ad and you're applying, Many times it is very, very important to revise that CV and put the emphasis on where the relevance is. You understand what I'm saying? If I come across a position for a teaching assistant or a teaching position, I can work a CV that will highlight what aspects of me that are relevant to the teaching profession. And that's what I should be doing. If, for example, it's something about working as a resource assistant in the medical facility, then maybe I have to look into my experience and find out what is relevant to that position. So keep it in mind that the CVs, you're talking about relevance. The other thing I want you to know about CVs too is this. Don't include information that can be used against you. We do that all the time. What am I talking about? Information that can be used against you. For example, I'm not sounding sexist or anything, but for example, you are a single mother with 3 kids. Very, very brilliant. You know the work. You can deliver the work to an incredible extent. Chances are, though, in your CV, and I've seen that many times, you state in your CV you're a single mother with 3 kids. The first reaction whoever is reviewing it has when they read that is that, oh wow, then I don't think that she'll have the time for this job. It's used against her. Very, very unfairly. I'm saying she could be the most dynamic candidate. But that one line, oh, single mother with 3 kids, hey, Charlie, this could be a difficult position for her. And not just women, it could be a man. And list certain things that whoever is reviewing it may assume that is going to interrupt the smooth operation of your work. So please, kindly do not note information, do not put that information that can be used against you. And I kid you not that one time I read a resume and the person actually had on the resume among his skills that he could speak tongues. And when I do lectures and I present it, they laugh. And I said, no, I mean it. It was included in the CV that they can actually speak tongues. You know, I find it totally irrelevant. If, however, he's applying for a counselor in maybe the Trinity College, and they're looking for somebody that has a lot of religious and spiritual versatility, I don't know, maybe at that point, speaking in tongues could be a plus. Yeah, then he can use it. All I'm saying is this, that you have to think through yourself to understand information that is not relevant and that even can be so personal it can be used against you. Think about that. Unless they ask for it, there are certain information that you don't need to provide. You want to provide that you're competent for the job, that you can do the job, and you have the ability to do the job. And you're going to add value to that position. Okay? When they call you for an interview, when they see the CV and they call you for an interview, and you impress them at the interview, at that time, trust me, it doesn't matter whether you're a single mother with 3 kids. They want to hire you. They've seen you. They have heard you. They love what you say. They can tell how great you're going to be for that position. They will now be willing to work. How can we accommodate anything that you may need because we want you? But before then, don't give somebody who has just a cursory look of your application, disqualify you based on that. Now, what goes on the CV? The important basic ones are: 1 is your name and your reliable address. These days, the world is changing. So it's not just an address, you must have an email as well. If you don't have an email, 2018, applying for a job, something is not quite right. You must have an email, okay? And please also know that the email must be professional. Be your name at, or, you know, you can't give me an email called hotchick@hotmail, you know, and even think I'm going to even look at your CV. Just the selection of your email, you know, sexybaby@ you know, whatever.com. That won't work, you know, or smooth criminal. I'm saying smooth criminal because I saw it once, you know. His resume was smooth criminal at Yahoo or whatever. That won't work. So you need an address, and then you need a reliable email, and hopefully they can get in touch with you. These things. Your address is your name, your phone number, and your email. Basic. The second basic thing that should go on your CVs is your education. It's very, very important that you list your education. But even here, please note, it's not everything that's vital. For example, if you have a master's degree in a field, okay, so you start, your education is Kwaku Sintimisa, you have your master's in philosophy or economics. Then you talk about your degree, your first degree. And then any relevant education that's of a tertiary level, higher learning, you can list. Once you put down that you have your master's, what I'm saying is this, once you put down that you have your master's, you don't have to go down to where you went to secondary school. I've seen resumes that will detail where they entered LA primary school in Labadi before they went. No. The important thing is your highest level of education is very, very important. If it's a master's, great, let's see it, and then your graduate work, your master's, and then your bachelor's work. And then if you have done any courses that are relevant to that, you can list them. But you don't have to go all the way through to secondary school or high school and things you did in high school. No, you're going too far down. So education should be relevant in terms of your two highest levels. Any others can come on as other subjects that you have learned. But importantly, on your CV, I want to see your university or whatever your highest level of education is. Very, very important. And like I said, unless your primary school is your highest, you don't need to come from PhD and trace all the way down to your primary school. Okay? So on education too, be very careful. Just submit the relevant ones for education. So you have your name and address, you have education, and then the next part of it is what they call career objective. It's very, very important. Sometimes you may need to throw that in, and we'll discuss that as we go along, why you may need it or why you may not need it. But once you have your education, you go into career objective. And that is great because career objective allows you here again to specifically talk about that position that you're applying for. Now, it's left your application letter, it's now in your resume. So you put down your career objective and apply it specifically to the position on why you want to get into that and how that is related to the career that you're in. That will be your career objective. After that comes your work experience. And for those of you who have worked, the others who don't have any work experience, we'll talk about that later. We'll do a separate edition on that. But those of you who have work, after your career experience, you now go into your work experience, your work history. Okay, and here too, when you look at CV writing or resume writing, you find many formats that you can use. It can be, the most common one is the chronological order. So you've talked about you have your name and your address. You've talked about your education. Now you're talking about your work history. The work history is in a chronological order. And it starts with the last job you did. So if you're currently working with Sapphire Ghana Limited, or you're currently working with Multimedia, or you're currently working with Ghana Medical School, whatever it is, the current one starts it. Then you go to the one just before that. Then after that, you treat the one just before that. So it's chronological. It starts with what you're doing now all the way to where you began. And here to our advice, look for relevance. Maybe you began doing something totally different, totally unrelated, totally not connected to what you're doing now or what you're applying for. So there's no need to talk about that one that has no connection at all to the position as part of the experience because it doesn't count for anything. Okay? So you get to work experience, and work experience too, you talk about it chronologically. And then you list what you've done to date. From the point that you are in today, from the point that you've started to where you began. But be selective. Make sure you're using only the information that enhances your qualification for that particular position. Otherwise, it might not be necessary. Okay? Okay, so quickly to wrap up, the 4 areas that we covered is number 1, for the CV, you definitely do need, is a must, of course, your name, address, and your contact information. And 2, your career objective. Number 3 is your education. And then the 4th one that we talked about is your work experience and how it should be done chronologically. Now, in our next episode, we'll be talking about how do you actually put this information together to get the strongest impact on the hiring people. How do you put your information together? We'll discuss that in our next episode.